Oh, no, it's not like that. Daycare.
We're just here, weren't we?
Yep. How are you? Yeah, all we did was switch sides. Yeah.
Thought was keeping a good enough eye on it, that nobody turned it up, but apparently I wasn't. Listen, I will dad mode that thermostat all day long, do not play with me.
Might see that. Okay, it is 6 o'clock, so I will call this meeting to order. We'll note that Councilman Savage is online tonight, I believe traveling. The first item of business is our public comment in our work sessions. Public comment is the opportunity for citizens to bring their input to an item that we may be discussing tonight, or bring to our attention something that you may hope to see us discuss in a future meeting. It is limited to 3 minutes. We ask that you respect that time. You could have a long agenda and things to do. Is there anyone who would like to make public comments? And I will say one more thing. There are no public hearings tonight, so it's this is the only chance. Go ahead, sir. State your name and address for the record.
Richard Larry, 27, 1827 west, 1825 south. I've
Well,
only lived there 4 years,
okay,
but I'm still having to memorize because I came from a place that didn't have the numbers. I know the numbers because I went to school in BYU and Provo. I feel I don't like this. I don't want it delivered to my house. I feel like you're jamming it down our throats because there's no way here that we can respond, except carts will arrive April 25th, April 2025. That's all it says. I don't want one of these at my house. I have no place to put it. Our HOA doesn't approve putting it outside any place. Anyway, I worked hard for my income and I'm on a fixed retirement, very fixed. I recycle aluminum cans as much as I can, and I recycle bottles and the plastic and the glass. and I get money back for them, rather than having to pay $4 for a blue bucket that I don't want. I worked hard. I was in the military. I was also a government worker, and I also mowed lawns on the side just to make a living. And I paid my Social Security and my taxes to the IRS. And yet they took away part of my Social Security because the government didn't collect my Social Security. So I'm very limited in my income. I don't like that either. Anyway, I want to recycle my own things and receive payment to myself to supplement my retirement. I know it's just a pittance, but it all helps. It helps me. If the blue bucket is delivered to me to my house, I don't know where I'd put it or whatever, and I'd still have to pay the $4, and I do not like that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Jane?
Hello, Shane Croton, address 2353 South, 3585 West. Just had a few comments that I'd like you to consider when you're discussing planning item number 2 for Salt Rock PRD. I think some of their data in their presentation was skewed as far as density comparisons, because they're comparing it to developments that have townhomes, which are significantly smaller in lot sizes. And comparing some of the other developments next to it, Trailside, all those single family, if you don't count the homes that are part of an open space, the lot size is 0.16. Village at the Bluff, their lot sizes for single family is 0.13, and Edgewater Park is 0.115. So it's as much as 2,900 square feet larger in lot sizes in like Trailside than what's going to be most of the lots here in the Salt Rock subdivision. When I added things up, it looked like only about 38 of the 124 lots were larger than 0.11. So it seems like most of those are 0.09 or close to that low end, which are a lot smaller than what's over in that area. I think it's a great fit for the area as far as the design. I would be all for it. But I think, you know, maybe they took out about 12 lots to get some of those small lots up to a better size. Would be helpful. Also, one of the comments I noticed in the staff comments was that they're going to be asking for an exception for the garage size. And I'd ask you not to allow that. We already have too many parking problems because people can't fit their cars in the garage. So then they're on the driveways, and a lot of the driveways aren't even fitting cars. So then they're out on the street. And so it's just something that cascades down. So if we could leave that according to the current code, I think that would be best. But also the reduction in a few homes, I think, you know, to maybe an allowance for those in the Trailside area that are thinking they're going to get a lot of traffic. You know, a few less homes, maybe can help. It's a good compromise. So it's just something to think about when they're discussing.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead, Jeff.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Wilcox. I live at 1677 West, 2575 South. We've had some challenges in the cemetery. Our two grandchildren are buried. And I know this is a thankless job. Dave, in particular to you, I know this is a thankless job, but I want to say thank you for hearing our concerns. Thank you for the discussion that will happen tonight. Please It's all we have left. Our grandchildren. It's all we have to remember them by. And please give us an opportunity when we go there. That's sacred ground to us. And please help us to ensure that it's respected. Dave, thank you. I know we put a lot on your plate. Thank you. Brody, thank you for your considerations with that.
Anyone else? Last call, if there is no other discussion items tonight, so. Okay, I will close public comment. We'll jump right into our planning items. Item C1 is a recommendation from the Planning Commission, application for zone change for a property located at 3281 West, 700 South. This is currently zoned as an A1 property, and the request is to go to residential R3. The applicant is Landon Costley. Noah, anything we need to be updated, or I think everything's in the packet on this?
No, you said it all. Planning Commission reviewed it. They're recommending approval.
Okay. This is a small lot that was a remnant of a UDOT property. It's next to a church. It's kind of a unique space. This won't be a major subdivision anyway. So what are your thoughts, council?
Noah, can you remind us of the access challenges? Wasn't there something with the access to this neighborhood being too close to another intersection?
Yeah, in our subdivision ordinance, we have a rule that says that new roads have to be further than 7.5 seconds if you're going this deep. So if you look at a map, there's 3300 West and 30 Lane that come in right there. And so if they, I mean, this is a separate issue from the zoning. Like you could rezone it and then it's just something that he has to deal with, but it was brought up because it's something to be aware of, you know. If they build a road right there, he'll need to get a variance. If he gets the rezone, there's also an option to subdivide the lots without building.
Yeah, it will be very difficult if it's more lots that would actually require a road because there's no physical way they can match the speed requirement. Any other thoughts? Okay.
I don't have any real objection to it.
Okay. All right, then we will move this forward to our next agenda, which will be April 8th. This will be up for approval and a vote. Item number C2 is recommendation from the Planning Commission, application for zone change on preliminary plan approval for property located at 3015 South, 2000 West. This is currently in a couple of different zones. It is zone A1 on one side, R1 on another, and a small portion of this actually is incorporated in an RPC. They are seeking planned residential development, PRD, and the application is from Cole West Development. This is one that we've referred to before in a consulting forum, where it's kind of two triangular spaces. I would hope that people took the time to drive by this because the western triangle at present is a pond. So this is going to take some work. It's going to take a little bit of time. We also heard public comment referring to this one, but I will leave it up to council to discuss your approval or concerns for approval.
I agree with Shane on this one. I think parking is a nightmare everywhere, pretty much everywhere. Parking's a nightmare.
Yeah.
And I would not agree to lower the size of the garage. I think that we just went through the old garage thing not very long ago about the size of a garage and what the standards that it should be. And I think allowing for someone to not have to uphold those standards that we just made sure that people could use their garages, that's kind of defeating the whole purpose of what we just did. Some people like smaller lots, I understand that. I mean, I get it. If some people don't like yard take care, I would live in the middle of the cattle pasture, who knows that? I don't want to take care of the yard either. But the parking with that many units in that small of an area, the parking is gonna be a nightmare.
Any other thoughts?
So here are my thoughts. I think I don't know what else would work well here besides housing for residents. So I think single family dwellings are a good fit in this area. I think a PRD is a little bit too dense. I think doing something in an R3 gives them a little bit more space, a little bit more breathing room, a little bit more room to put in proper sized garages. And then we're still one of the fastest growing and developing cities in the county. So something like this, in my opinion, I think if we're going to add, whatever it is, 124, or if it's R3, if it's a little bit less dense, if we can add those more slowly over time. Maybe a development in phases, so we're not bringing on so much.
That's the only useful space for that, but yeah. So if we're gonna approve houses for anyone, I would say that. The late area for that. That's it.
Here, I have a couple of comments when you're ready.
Go ahead, Jordan.
So my thoughts are along the lines of what everyone's saying. First of all, I don't want to diminish the parking that we require currently. Secondly, just because it's a PRD does not mean that it's required to have small lots. I think we have a fundamental problem that we're starting to see in Syracuse is that we're not building anything bigger than R3. I've had a lot of people actually express frustration that there is nothing in the R2, R1 type zones for anyone to move to. So the only thing we can do in Syracuse right now is hope that unless you want to buy the starter home, there's no path forward for anyone else to move to Syracuse. So we're essentially we're only building starter homes anymore. The PRD does allow for larger size lots. I'd actually like to see where this is actually a mix. That's kind of the whole idea of it's a planned residence community where you've got a little bit of everything in there. I would like to see some larger lots that at least someone who wanted to buy an R2 sized home would have that option. And maybe, and again, in this and on all future developments, I just don't want to only build starter homes in Syracuse from here on out. I think there is a housing crisis that goes beyond just the small homes. And I think we need to address all of those, and I don't see this doing that. And then there is the whole thing is we have a lot under construction of apartments and very small homes that I'm a little reluctant to take on additional units in the immediacy. I don't think our infrastructure is keeping up and we need to catch up.
Okay, thank you, Jordan. Julie?
And that was my comment as well. We have 900 plus homes already entitled on the books. Small and next one. I mean, it's the books. So much so that.
Can we get a mic closer to Julie? I can't hear her. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay,
And also what Jordan said about, there's no need. Syracuse has gone above and beyond and fulfilling a lot of those requirements of tenancy housing. We don't have to do that anymore, but we do want to provide maybe more of a mix. As developments come in, keep it in mind that some people actually do want bigger lots.
right?
I don't think people want bigger lots in this particular area, so I'll be outvoted again.
I want to mean by a bigger lot. Full-size garage, not physical point.
So,
We decided that we're just doing small, like, Jordan had a point, but who,
well, it's what gets applied for, and everybody's applying for small because you
it
can
makes
fit
more
most
money,
units.
yeah.
But
That's what it is.
But we do have
Point,
almost
yeah.
1,000, I mean.
Yeah.
900 plus homes that are going to be built, and we need to come focus on that.
So,
Everything's,
I
all
wanna weigh
roads
in-
have construction.
yeah, I want to weigh in with a couple of thoughts. Number one, if you look at the part in the packet where they had expressed some density, I think that, surrounding density fails to take into consideration that all of the ones that go this high include attached units. And, we have got our fill of attached units right now in the city. We don't need more of those. These are not attached, but the density is reflective of attached units. I would think that, number one, if you look around the surrounding area, we haven't approved anything that isn't a special designation that is under 5,000 lot or 5,000 square foot lots. And most of these are. Yes, there's some that are 5,000 square feet, but I would recommend that we encourage them to get at least 5,000 square feet. These are still very small lots at 5,000 square feet. And yes, they would lose some units. It's a very awkward spot in the city, so it does have to get developed with something that takes the location in mind. But Julie brought up a very good point. We have over 950 entitled units that are permitted at this point. And we have almost 1,500 or over 1,500 that actually are approved and entitled. We know from history, and we'll talk about this a little later, but you know, from history, when we get over 400 or 500 units in the city in 1 year, it is devastating to our infrastructure. So we've got to be conscious that we don't let everything be built at one time. Most of the cities in Davis County are building, and this is just the statistics that are published by the Tim Gardner Institute. Most of Davis County are building less than 200 lots per year. And that changes their ability to handle the infrastructure dramatically. We have been building 300 to 400 units for 2 decades. And when we get up over the 500 mark, it is really difficult on our citizens because the pressure comes that we haven't been at a pace that we can sustain. So for that reason, the only thing, if this were to go forward, it would have to be phased in some form in a development agreement, in my mind, so that we don't get 120 more units on next year's books. That would be critical.
5,000 square feet, right?
I think so.
An acre, and I don't have to do the math because I only know the 660 times 60. So 43,560 square feet in an acre. So 5,000 per, that's like 8.5 houses per acre. That's insane.
It is pretty dense.
That is insane and might as well be building townhomes.
Jen, it's actually not that many. Because by the time you take out space for roads and stuff, you're probably looking at 6 to 7 per acre, which is still quite good.
Yeah.
Take away one.
But anyway, these are good points. It sounds like we've got a pretty good handle on what the concerns are. This will be up for a vote on April 8th. Is there any more discussion anybody'd like to have? Otherwise, I'll move this on. Okay, I'm moving this on to number C3, which is recommendation from the Planning Commission. Application to amend the development agreement with Shoreline Development Phase 5A. This is a really interesting little piece because I remember very clearly when Shoreline Development came in and they were overly insistent that they attach these 2 side parcels to the overall development. It was like critical, couldn't take them out, but they're also on a main residential road that has farming communities. So it didn't really fit to me why they had to have these extra little spurs. But now one of them has had a difficult time fitting into the development. So they're asking that they move it back to an R1 so that they can do what is consistent with what's already there. A1, which would make it a farming community again. So anyway, anything else I missed there, Noah? Otherwise, I'm open to what the council has to say.
No, planning commission considered it and they're recommending approval.
Okay.
I'm all about going by tactical. Yeah.
Any other?
I don't have any concerns.
This one just never seemed to fit to me how they were going to get a road in and include this in the other development. So it does make sense to me and I'm okay with it.
Some things should just stay farmland. They're just not reasonable for houses.
Okay, so I'm hearing general consensus. We'll put this on the next meeting for a vote. Item number C4 is recommendation from planning commission application for a text amendment to section 10.75.30 and 10.30.20 of the Syracuse Municipal Code to allow accessory dwelling units in a PRD. Now, I'm going to give you my really passionate appeal on this one, council. I don't have a vote, but we do not have accessory dwelling units within higher density units. They are only in our R zones. And I don't know why on earth we would try to take and do this. All this would do is create illegal duplexes. If you're going to apply for duplexes, apply for duplexes. So that's my opinion on it, but go ahead, weigh in.
I have no interest in making a PRD zone more dense by allowing ADUs.
I agree with that.
If you like your neighbors that much, then you in a friend. Don't want you, if you want to shake their hands, just.
And in particular, this particular development already got increased density with the attached units that are there. So making the single units attached seems kind of ridiculous, but that's my opinion. Okay, so we will move this on for a vote in the next meeting. Again, this one already had a recommendation to deny from planning commission, so it looks like we're on the same track. Item C5, request from Matthew Swain of Perry Commercial to amend the first amendment of agreement for tax increment rebate for an EOS gym facility. This has been through 2 iterations. The applied for tax increment rebate to build this property, and then it didn't get built, and they came back for another one. And in the second one, because of concerns of development, I remember very distinctly that we put a time limit that they needed to get started by a certain date, and that date was November 1st. The footings at least had to be poured. They made that by about 50% only. The other thing that is out of compliance with the original agreement is the original agreement was that they would have a pool. We have done pool agreements in the past with the Rush, where the agreement was that they would make it a standard swimming size pool so that kids from schools could practice there. At least it would be a facility within the city limits. This one is also short of that requirement. So they've missed the mark in 2 places, but they are asking again to reinstate the incentive that they've missed. So I'll leave it up to you to discuss, council.
Pool, I feel like it's not much smaller.
No, it's not.
It's
It's
not,
only a few
and I
feet.
don't, and I understand, like,
Yeah.
it's a technical thing, like,
Yeah.
well, we can, and I feel like
Uh,
they're coming
the-
along. So, but the pool, I feel like it's reasonable, but the footings, Jordan, what do you think about the footings? Yeah, that was you, my guy. Yeah.
So for me, it was actually more about the pool. I mean, as a former, I swam in high school. And one of the big things is the reason why we're trying to use this tax increment financing was to add, something that the community could benefit from. And we were hoping that this could be, maybe an avenue where our kids could practice in this pool to get ready for their swim meets and things like that. But with it not being a standard size, I mean, it's really hard to do times because now you're turning more often, those types of things. So this really, that was kind of irritating when I found that out. And then the footings not being in, are they even going to finish on time? I guess I'd be curious about that too. I know we had a finish date established in
Yeah.
They're supposed to be open by January 1st, 2026. It appears that they'll hit that, but
Okay.
there's still a lot of work to be done.
So
Yeah.
I'm just weigh
Go
in
ahead.
here, my opinion on this, and my number one concern is that when you make agreements for a reason, and we have people in the city who have made development agreements and broken them, and we don't want to get the reputation that doesn't matter, that the conditions of the agreement are not important, because if you consistently say, sure, we'll just rewrite the contract to meet whatever happened, then there's no teeth to any agreement that we ever do with the development agreement. That's my
And this
opinion.
specific development agreement is a pusher. It's pushed the limits many, many times. Like, we're already so far out in this development agreement that's like,
Okay. Other thoughts?
I mean, for this one, we actually doubled what they were getting just to get these items.
Yes.
And I don't know, this is
5%
frustrating to me.
Okay.
I agree with Jordan on the pool. I think the pool is a bigger deal. We wanted to use tax incentive or tax rebates to have a community asset, a regulation sized pool that community members could use, and to come up just a few feet short, I don't understand why you do that when it's right in the agreement.
so did you, the pool contractor said the as many pools, well, I would get a new pool contractor. I mean, that's what, okay, I'm glad you have many pools, but our city wants this, and so you gotta change what your many is.
I think the first push or extension was somewhat warranted because it was a gym during COVID and things like
Yeah.
that, and some things happened, but we extended it and came back and said, okay, we're willing to increase the incentive. Here's your new deadlines and here's your new parameters, and they were all missed.
So,
So what does the agreement, what merit does the agreement have if you can just miss it and not meet it and still get the incentive?
So no child left behind scenario.
I will remind us that at the time, the question came up at the discussion table, is there any reason why these couldn't be met? And the answer was no. So at
That's
the
correct.
time, it was expected that it could be made, but Brett started talking, we've all talked.
All right.
No, that's fine. I was just going to say, I agree about the course of dealing kind of issue here, that you can't set a precedent in the contract of allowing things to change, because that can happen in the future. And I think that other contracts that are into that could be looked at. The other concerning part of this for me has been, if there was an issue, it should have been addressed at the time that arose, and somebody should have come to the city and said, we've got these issues, or we need these adjustments, and to my knowledge, that hasn't been done. So those are my concerns.
I think that's a great point, you know, coming before the hand, or before the missed deadline is different than coming after the missed deadline. Okay, so this will be up for a vote on the 8th. Good discussion. The last one of our planning items is going to be discussion of proposed agreement with Davis County for third-party building inspections. I think this one's pretty simple. Utah law changed, and we have to have alternates if you can't meet the inspection deadlines. This is not us asking for help. This is us being the help to Davis County. If they can't meet their schedule, they're looking to contract with us as people that they can go to.
Like for us to go to do their building inspection, do they know how strapped our building inspectors are?
We don't have to. This is an authorization that we are
Okay,
an
very
option.
expensive.
Yeah, no, we become an option for them to contract, and it is, go ahead, Colin.
State law does require cities and counties to have backups. We've been in effect with, Kaysville, West Haven, and Farmington for just about a year and haven't used it once, but we do comply with state law by
State law
having
says
the
that.
ability.
And this is helping them comply with state law. I don't see a real problem. They don't want to use us any more than we want to be using. Okay, so I'm going to move, this one actually would qualify for consent. Does anybody have an objection? I can put this on the consent agenda. Okay.
I'm not
You-
gonna
you
object,
can.
it's following protocol, I trust our attorney.
Okay, so we will put this one on consent agenda for the next meeting on April 8th. Now we're going to move on to item D, which is discussions that pertain to amendments of the Syracuse City Code. The first one is a proposed amendment to Title 4.5.30, making hardship waivers for garbage and recycling fees and administrative approval. To me, this one's really pretty simple because the current process says that if you qualified for a hardship waiver, they'd have to come to the council. I don't think we want to hear those, and I don't think that we really want to do that.
Also,
Yeah. So I think that because it's a really academic standard, this is just allowing them to be an administrative consent if it's hardship. And I am all for this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Me too, agree.
Picture of
Yeah,
Okay.
statement and
that's,
send it in.
that's wonderful.
All right, I'm gonna put this on consent agenda, and sir that made the earlier comment about recycling. If you are in a difficult situation, this directly applies to you. You can apply for hardship waiver and be out of this.
Super simple.
So you just apply with the city and say, I have hardship in my personal income, and they can
And they'll
take care
be
of
in your
it.
town.
Do I have to present all my financial situation?
No, you do not. You have to just say you qualified for any of the state programs that qualify you.
Thank you.
Okay? All right, so I'm gonna move us past this one on to D2, which is proposed ordinance amending the Syracuse Municipal Code Title 7, Chapter 25, pertaining to regulations of fireworks and other ignition sources. Aaron, update us on this. This is mostly a Utah State changes.
Yeah, the main driving force of this change is the section 018, the public notice. And the public notice is something that's new to this ordinance. And it requires the applicant, and it also requires the city to notice the event. And part of the reason for that is for our sensory sensitive population, those that either served in the military or families that have special needs. It allows them the opportunity to know that these events are going to be taking place so they can make other arrangements. The rest of this is just really kind of a cleanup and matching some changes to the state code.
No, we already kind of, I know this is where our code has to comply with it, but we already do this with Miss Kara does a lot of this, doesn't she, on getting a lot of this notice out for people.
Right. One of the changes that we're going to make to this, I mean, one of the things is we're going to require the applicant to also advertise on their side. But we're also going to tie this to the fire department notify me. So those individuals who have those needs can sign up to notify me, and we'll get that posted as soon as an application is approved. So they'll get notified.
I think we're still, making every effort to go above and beyond the requirements on this, but it is an issue by changing.
I mean, I think we have 3 buildings that have boxes of earplugs that we offer for people, and we try to put a lot of, Miss Kara does a great job with that. I still think we don't pay enough. That putting the word out that it's gonna happen, and we're gonna get some flash of it anyway, but.
Well, and these public
better and better.
displays are pretty minimal. They
Yeah,
don't
we have
really, well, with the pumpkin walk from last year, and then maybe some of the things that like high school does or something like that. So it is pretty minimal, but a large enough impact to the public.
Does anybody have any reason why we would just make these changes on the consent agenda? Okay, we'll move this to the consent agenda for April 8th. Item D3, proposed ordinance adopting Syracuse Municipal Code 4.35.4 or 225 regarding the new Happy Tails Dog Park. We just have to update our code just slightly because we want to allow an off-leash park within the park to be off-leash. So this is kind of academic. Is there anybody who has a challenge with this? Okay, I'm just cleaning up the language really. All right, so we'll put this on the consent agenda and we will move on to D4. This is ordinance repeal and reenacting Syracuse Municipal Code Title 4, Chapter 30. These are cemetery regulations. Now, this is actually a much bigger discussion, and we'll go over this in general. You're all aware, and we did have public comment today, that we had some challenges in our cemetery. Now, the first time we had a challenge, we thought that if we gave some stern warnings, we would take care of this. Obviously, that wasn't stern enough. So my first call was to Colin to say, okay, what can we even legally do? What are the limits of what we can and can't do? And we're obviously going to have to be much more stern with those who are there because they don't value it the same way that our staff has. But I'm going to let Colin talk specifically about these. And anyway, take it away, Colin.
Thank you, Mayor. This was in fact, what started out to be rather simple and just grew and grew and grew and grew, and now it's proposed that we repeal the existing ordinance in its entirety and replace it with all new language. Most of it is in the existing ordinance, but this does several things that the existing ordinance does not do, and those are those 11 bullet points. I found out in the process of this that the mayor is supposed to appoint the sexton. That doesn't currently happen, and in fact, the sexton, it does?
Yeah,
I was told that it didn't, but
we had to do it in a meeting, yeah.
I think it's clear
appointed.
back with tests. I don't think it has, but.
apparently it hasn't happened lately.
Oh, no, not lately.
So this would remove that from the mayor and the city council and give that appointment power to the Department of Parks, Director of Parks and Recreation. It updates several definitions. It expands the sexton's duties. There's a new provision in there that says so long as the sexton needs to make a rule or regulation that does not conflict with this ordinance, the sexton can do that at the time. That will help the sexton deal with problems as they arise. Currently, our current ordinance has a very lengthy, hugely difficult due process built into it. When someone buys a burial plot and doesn't use it for 60 years, but there's also a state statute that's very simple. It says you give the best notice you can to the heirs of that person, because we're assuming that 60 years from now, the person who originally bought it probably is not anymore. So you do your best to find the heir, you give them notice, you give them 50 days, and at the end of the 50 days, it reverts back to the cemetery. We currently have how many?
I think there was, I don't remember what she told us.
Leslie told me, but there's
Like
60 or 70.
I think 66. Yeah.
66 lots that are just out there. They've been out there forever. They can't be used because we can't go through the process, because we can't comply with the process. We can't find the people and give them the notice because many of them are unfortunately deceased. So it changes that process to simply comply with the state law, which is much simpler, and it will allow us eventually to put those 66 lots back into the cemetery use. It addresses problems regarding scheduling of monuments and markers. It creates a time period, the monument and marker season from April 1st through November 1st, but gives the sexton the opportunity to move that back. If it's a really wet March and April, the sexton might want to move that back 3 weeks. If it's a really dry winter, maybe the sexton can move that up. So it gives the sexton the authority from year to year to change that as needed. Here's a key for Mr. Wilcox. It prohibits the driving over unprotected turf and over monuments and over markers. And that was the problem that originally brought Mr. Wilcox in to speak with many of us. There is a table in there that has dimensions. That table is slightly out of whack based on the size of things that have been allowed lately. And so this new table incorporates all of the dimensions that basically have been in effect for quite some time. There's an interesting provision in the current ordinance that says if someone wants to bury their deceased loved one outside of the cemetery, they can come to the city council and get permission to do that. And the city council can say, sure, go ahead and bury the person on the side of the new West Davis corridor or in your backyard or whatever. This takes that provision away.
Family land, like
We take
farm.
this away.
I want to be buried under a tree. Come on, man.
I'll plant a tree on you.
Okay. As long as it's not somewhere we'll look up.
And finally, the current ordinance has a provision that says the penalty is $200. We propose that it be raised up not to exceed 500. So still giving some leeway to the sexton to say, well, this isn't a $500 violation. This is only $150 violation, but some violations will be $500 violations. And in addition to the penalty, requires the person who did the damage. Our cemetery people will replace it, but we will send them a bill for the cost of the replacement or the repair. Yeah.
Basically abating them for the damage that they've done, which whether we collect or not, I think it sets a really good message that we will not tolerate these mistakes again, ever. You know, they should not happen to begin with, but there's not been teeth before in the ordinance, so that if someone like a marker company came in and disregarded the protocol, which is protecting sites and making sure that you've left things better than you found it, we can assess damages and fines. And I think that it's sad that we have to do that, because we really, you know, we've been a city that didn't have these kind of issues that had to be addressed And now that we do, we have to just deal with the world we live in. It's unfortunate.
It's not a city thing, it's a human race thing. It's somewhere along the line, I feel like, first of all, what happened to those headstones is a disgrace. And somewhere along the lines, we've lost the understanding that burial sites are sacred ground. For any race, any religion, any spirituality, they are sacred ground. And how you act and how you trumps on people's graves, it matters to families and matters to people. So I think they need to reiterate that to the people taking care. That it's sacred. It's not just your everyday job. These are people's loved ones they cry over when they come here, and seeing stuff like that is bullshit. Sorry, but it is. It was shocking. It was.
Well, I mean, we want to set in place a way to make it serious for those who didn't take it serious. That's the real issue. If we reached out and said, look, this is not okay. We're not happy with this. But unfortunately, we didn't have the leverage to say, if you hire somebody, because it's really, a lot of the people who have these companies, there are multiple companies that come and do this work. Some of them, because they're in the business, respect the places. One didn't. And they obviously hired somebody who didn't, and they need to hold that person accountable. And this is us holding the company accountable. And I'm glad we're making these changes. I'm sorry that it takes long. Government is slow, but it's the way that we have to do it.
So I have a couple of questions.
Go ahead.
So
I'd like to
when-
do a few after him.
Okay, you're on deck.
So one, when any of these companies gets a permit or anything to enter the cemetery, is that for only a certain day and certain time period? Do they have to provide before and after photos or anything like that so that we can see, kind of maybe put a little bit more of the onus on the people entering the cemetery to say, here's my before and after photos of how it was when I came, and here's how it was when I left.
Yeah, let me address those one at a time. So the first one is the before and after photos, I think is a best practice we can put in place that doesn't have to be in code. We can take a picture before, we can go look after, but I think it's on them to prove that they didn't make a problem. We shouldn't have to create a new position to prove that they didn't. They have to prove that they didn't. So that's something that we don't need a code change for, and we're adopting as a best practice.
Okay.
The other one that you mentioned, do they have a time frame? I think that we've been too liberal in the past because they could come anytime within a couple of days. I think that this has taught us that we have to tighten that up to a very narrow window so that they can't just do these things and then say, oh, I wasn't even around that day. We have to make it more narrow so that we can control the environment.
Why don't you schedule it with us? Hey, we've got to come out at this time so that we have someone that can.
We're looking at that.
Yeah.
Part of the problem is they have so many that they're doing in all different cemeteries. So it's hard to say, we're gonna be there at 12:30.
But you can tell us you're gonna be here March 7th, like as long as we know what day
Yeah.
you're looking for.
The
Yeah,
current
that's what we're looking
proposal
at.
says, you give us a date and a time, you're good for that day. If you don't get it done within 24 hours, you have to schedule it again and get another permit. Currently,
That's good.
you give us a date and a time and you show up when you feel like. So we're changing.
Within like a
That's
week.
not good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
and that's why we're changing it.
And then my other question
Yeah.
is, so this says that we have the authority, this gives us teeth and authority to charge them for actual cost for
Yes.
damages. So we don't own the headstones.
Correct.
So how does, if they damage a headstone, how does the owner of that headstone recoup that? Do they have to?
So it's a good question, and let me address that. So if a headstone is actually damaged, there's physical damage that needs to be repaired, we can either go to the company who originally produced it and get it repaired or replaced, or if that's not an option, because a company could have gone out of business by then, we could use an alternate company, but the bill then would go to the company that did the damage. So I think that this gives us the option to get it fixed now and charge them, whereas in the past, there probably were more steps in verifying and finding out who it was. This gives, we can shortcut some of that and just get it fixed, because we know we've got a clause now that makes the damages their responsibility.
So are we gonna hire like a company that does the cleaning for the headstones, get these tire tracks off and stuff, or did they come off?
They'll come off, you have to scrub them off.
That's what we got to
If our
damage,
people have
right?
to go scrub
Then
them off, then we'll
we
charge
we
for
charge
the
them
time.
for the
We
time.
have someone else to scrub them
Which in
off.
the past, we haven't.
Pass that on.
Yeah.
And also use it back up and rebalance.
Yeah.
Yes, if needed, yes.
Yeah, if they need to be raised or resettled, we can do that too.
But I mean, what collaboration is there? Because if one of these companies causes damage to a headstone, is there any, or are we just gonna fix it to our own liking, or is there any collaboration with the owner
That's a
or?
good question.
We collaborate with owners.
Okay,
So if something is called in and said that there's something that's damaged, we obviously go out and take a look at it and see what it is.
okay,
And then that's what we have to do, like, is it us, our
Okay.
employees that did it? Is it someone else? And that's where the he said, she said comes in. But if something happens and they won't take responsibility, then the city does fix that if it's damaged. And we walk through that with the owners.
Do we have cameras out there?
We do not.
Well, I get, I
It's
mean,
something
I like
that-
it.
Well, that's something that's been on the discussion.
Yeah.
That's another step we can take.
And this ordinance is really step 1 of 3. Step 2 and 3 will probably come together. That will be a general increase in fees in the fee schedule, next time we amend the fee schedule. And I'll tell you why in a moment. And the other one is, it is our intent that by July 1st, we will have a letter drawn up, a contract drawn up for each monument company, mortuary, et cetera, that does business that says, here's the regulations. You want to work in our cemetery, you sign here. We have not got that contract ready, but the plan is to get that done. The increase in fees is for this. Number 1, cemetery staff time for repairing small things and so forth. We currently have plywood there that you're supposed to lay the plywood down either on the wet turf or over the headstone or whatever, and then drive over the plywood so you're not doing damage, you're not leaving marks on headstones, you're not leaving ruts in the grass. That plywood, as it gets wet and gets driven on, will break down rather quickly, and so we're thinking even the cost of replacing the plywood, which currently we're down to a few sheets, I think, but there are costs in us providing the plywood. We talked about making them bring their own plywood. Truth is, how do you throw 20 sheets of plywood on the back of a truck that's already got 3 markers on it and drive it around the country? And it won't very well.
We try to address as many things as we can,
Yeah.
because we want to think through all the possible problems and make sure that we have the opportunity to fix them.
I think these are good steps in moving forward, yeah.
I am a little bit concerned when you say one day. I think we discussed at one point, you have to make sure that it's during daylight of that day. It's not like 24 hours, but it's daylight of that day, because we have to be able to be out of there by dark.
Before the buses come out?
No, but it's before it's even more hazardous. In the dark, it's more hazardous that you might hit something. We want to be as cautious as we can. And I have heard of, not in this cemetery, people that come late night with big lights, and I just don't think they can be careful enough working under lights in a cemetery. So
Sorry, I have
Go ahead.
one more pointer question. Is a singular up to $500 fine sufficient? Should there be a first offense this, second offense up to this,
I'm with you.
and then third strike, you're
Can, that's what
you
I,
don't get to do work for a certain amount of time until you accomplish X, Y, and Z, but I would think an escalated fine.
it's not.
So we have the you can't come back until you fix it and pay for it provision in there. That's new.
Okay,
But if you want to step up the fines from whatever to the next one, I have no
How
problem.
many chances we gotta give them though?
2.
That's okay.
Well, and yeah, because a fine, depending on the size of the business, could just be the matter of course of doing business, the cost, right?
Yeah.
But if we can have the teeth to say, okay, you can't come into the cemetery, that's restricting business, which has a lot of.
Well,
That's where I wanted to go was.
well, I'm assuming those fines can help us pay for new plywood and
That's the
things
plan.
like that for those
Yeah.
bad actors as well, so.
That's assuming we have that many bad actors.
Well, and I would imagine that this was, more or less a careless
It was
employee,
an actor, not,
actor, and it's not like,
I want to
yeah.
give Jordan a chance. We did say you were on deck. You're up, bud.
All right, so this one's actually more of the legalese. In section 4.30.060 under internments. I guess what are we defining as remains of human bodies? And the thing is, the statement there says there shall be no internment of anything other than the remains of human bodies in the cemetery. Now, again, I take everything literally, and to me that means clothing and shoes and again, I just want to make sure that it's clear that
Well,
He's got a point,
the
though.
casket's already closed.
Okay, Jordan, what we clearly
So
meant
they're not
was
gonna be opening. it
no
up.
dogs, no motorcycles, no cars.
Yeah.
It's already closed, it's ready to be interned, they're not gonna reopen it and see if,
but again, again, I'm being overly literally and I accept that. But technically a casket is not remains of a human body. Any clothing they're wearing is not remains of a human body. So I just feel like that statement is a little too explicit in nature and should probably be expanded to include coffins and all of the stuff that goes along with it. Again, I know I'm being overly literal, but it's
If
the
I
way
could
it reads.
spell accoutrements, I would put it in, so I'll look it up.
There's an ABC check mark on top.
So,
I'll fix that.
all right, so we're fixing that. That's point taken. Did you have others?
No, that was the only one. Everything else I was okay with.
Okay. Anyone else having, I mean, I'm all for making this tough because I want this to not ever happen again. I want people to be afraid to take the chance of making a mistake. You should just follow the rules and respect the cemetery.
I feel like this is the one time you guys should have let me call them.
And you have to receive a call from Jennifer.
Paul,
It's not gonna go the way you think it is.
Paul, do you want me to put in stepped up fines?
I mean, I don't mind that. I don't
I
know if
agree.
anybody else.
I would be for it. Are there others?
How do we just create somewhere like that? You should have
That's a
to.
good improvement. I like that.
I do like another, up to like 1,000.
Yeah. It needs to be enough that somebody they'll not do this again. Of course, we want them to never do it, but we thought that, sternly worded letters would just get them to appreciate that, and we realized that wasn't enough. So
Certainly where letters don't really get much anywhere these days.
that's why we're doing this.
Is the city then responsible to provide the plywood and have it stored in a place and keep it in condition since? So somebody doesn't show up and say there is no plywood.
Yeah, I think we can't do it any other way. We're adding that to our responsibility, but I don't know that we get results without us doing that.
Oh, that's what keeps us.
Yeah.
Makes me have to schedule.
And if we move things around, because we now have a new maintenance facility, so we're not using the cemetery for every vehicle that we have. We could store these inside, and they'll last a little longer, and they hopefully won't walk away.
I mean, that's what my
Pull 'em out
concern
and-
is, if the city's responsible, which I thought that probably would happen.
Yeah,
Somebody showing up and saying, well, your plywood sucks, and we can.
now, we're a part of every burial, so we would be able to monitor that as well.
And the before and after.
Yeah. Okay, I feel like we've got something we can work with.
I'm certain we have someone in public works who would be super like, don't drive on my lawn, like we could put them in, or not public works, but Parks and Rec, put them in charge of that, like. There's some people out there in Parks and Rec that take that long very seriously.
Oh, for sure. And if we were able to be up there all the time, that's the problem.
Yeah, fair.
We're not there. If there was, we had somebody at the
Person.
cemetery all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have two in public too.
Yeah.
Yeah, public works.
Okay, I feel like we've come to a conclusion here, so this will be on for a vote, which will amend this ordinance on April 8th. Let's move on to item number E, discussion regarding proposed resolution establishing a temporary free speech zone at Canterbury North Park. There is a Utah law that if we, that in the event of an open house, such as the Temple Open House that will take place in May, we have to allow for a protest if someone decides to do that. The law states that it needs to be adjacent. However, in this case, the only adjacent properties are private, and we do not control that. So the next most public property is North Canterbury Park. So we need a motion from the council, and this is what this is, to approve that as the established free speech zone, because it's the nearest property that we control.
So if that wasn't there, then where would it be?
Well, it would have to be a property that we control, so it would be the
Across
next.
the street.
It would be
No, because that's a private residence. You,
I'm just saying,
Sidewalk.
it's rare,
Yeah.
that type of, what they call.
Zone.
Overflow, what is that called? What is it?
I'm good with this.
Detention.
Yeah, it's
Right.
a detention pond, so if that detention pond wasn't there. I'm
they'd
just
probably have to
curious.
go to Canterbury South.
Yeah.
Because it would be the next most, we can't designate a spot that doesn't have the capacity for what may be. And sidewalks are not ruled to
So
have
you'd have to pick
capacity.
the next closest.
The next closest place with any capacity. And technically in the law, if that North Canterbury were completely full elbow to elbow, we'd have to provide an overflow space. We don't know if that's the case, and until it is the case, we don't have to deal with that, but we do have to designate this. So
Yeah, all right. Yeah.
does
Free
anybody
speech,
have
free speech.
anybody have a challenge with where it's the closest physical place? So I think that's
It's
what,
literally across the street from the.
yeah.
Well,
Have a
it's a
better
little-
location.
I mean,
It's a little diagonal.
we may get people who say, well, why can't I protest in the field? The field belongs to the Briggs family. We have no right to say what can and can't happen on their property.
They have tractors with forks.
They control their property. A house across the street, they control their property. So this is what we have as the best option. Okay? All right, so we will make that designation on April 8th. Item F, continued discussion regarding draft, key results and key performance indicators for city vision statements. This is something we've been working on over time. Basically, how do we go through and measure that we're doing the things that are in our mission statements and goals? Now, how would you like to handle this, council? Because we can go item by item through some of these, or we can go just take the ones that you'd like to talk about. It's up to you.
Yeah, the draft has showed the edits that we made from the previous round. So got a chance to look through that. Again, the key here, I think, is, are we measuring the right things that will help us determine if we're meeting your vision? And that's really focus.
And I'm leaving this really open because we can take as much time or as little time as you deem necessary. If you guys want to read these on your own and say, I'll just bring back changes, that's okay. If you want in an open meeting to go point by point, we can do that too. It will just take what it takes. So give me some feedback on how you'd like to review these. Because it's all an option.
I don't need to go anywhere.
Okay.
I just had a couple of things.
Point them out. Moving forward.
So when we talk about debt per capita rate versus similar cities, and then we talk about percentage of projected expenses, or total city budget per capita versus nearby cities. How, if we're already calculating a total city budget per capita, how difficult would it be to do a departmental budget per capita as well? I mean, I think I'd like to see that, to see how the departments,
Okay.
you know, how we're spending per capita per department. I think that would be helpful to see.
Okay. Good
That's
point.
just me though.
No, I think it's doable and manageable. Let's do it.
And then the other question that I had, and we some of it was struck out But what type of survey, do we conduct any surveys with our citizens?
We have,
Is
I
it,
think the question really becomes where are they more useful? I mean, where do you get, what subjects and options do you get enough feedback? That it's a fair sample,
Mhm.
because there are surveys that we've put out that were less than 100 responses versus 35,000 people. That's not a very good sample size. There are others that we put out. And then the other question is, are we really targeting the questions we want to know? Because we've had a couple of times where a survey only raised more questions than it
Yeah.
really answered.
I guess my question being is, I mean, I think it's fairly simple for us to get KPIs when it comes to finances and numbers and things like that, but yeah, it's easy to quantify, but when we're talking about how is public perception, I don't know how to do that other than ask the public, and are there specific interactions or times that we interact with the public where we could easily have an automated survey be sent right after, like, you're coming in to do a
Building permit?
building permit, or you're coming in to get your passport, or you're reserving something with the Parks Department, or you signed up a youth for a youth program. Those types of things where we're closely interacting with the citizenry. Is there a way to just audit, or is there things that we want to ask them to see how we're doing, and is there an easy way to automate that?
We have done with parks a few times, and I think that that's a really good sample because you ask kids or parents of kids in programs, they signed them up.
Yeah.
And have an email. That's a good place to send that out because you're only getting feedback from people who had somebody in the program. It's really irresponsible, I think, when you put something like on Facebook and say, who wants to talk about something you've never used? So it's not a reflection.
Say that again.
Well, it is-
Say it again.
We have comment cards, like at the Park and Rec, they can pick up a comment card. I don't know, is that something we have? And
We do not have comment cards, but we like do surveys and we send out emails, they send them back.
Yeah, I think they, especially when it's in those situations where someone has conducted a service with the city, it's completed, how was your experience, right?
Yeah.
How you doing?
That's pretty doable.
I would
It's
have loved a
those five
survey after a
structure.
particular interaction that I had. I would have offered some feedback.
Mhm.
But negatively? Positively?
Well,
Constructive?
constructive, I think. I wanted to offer feedback. I did that in a different manner, but a survey would have.
Exactly. See, that's that's what I'm getting at. And who's gonna fill out the surveys? People who are just upset about, like, when you get it, like, say, kid has to go out to someone's house to do an inspection for a water heater, right? And then the people there are in bad mood. And he's like, okay, leaves, and they get a thing from him that says, how did
Yes,
you do today? And
But
they're
my
like,
interaction that I'm talking about, I wasn't in a bad mood. I had to interact with a department in our city for work. And I think we could have done a lot better. I mean, it's just that blunt. I deal in customer service every day. And so that's why I'm saying, are there opportunities where we can get feedback to really gauge how we are perceived by our citizens?
And I think that it's a mix, and that's the point, is that, for example, when we were talking about recycling options, and I put a survey out there just to see what the general temperature was, we got over 1,000 responses in a week. That was great. There were still a lot of people who say, I've not heard of this. So was it all inclusive? No, but it was. That's why we do it in other ways as well, sending postcards, notices. So something like that, you have to take multiple options and kind of assess them as a group. Would I put out a survey on a zoning question? Absolutely not, because you're not getting the people who are directly affected by that zone. You're getting people who may or may not even live in the city, because that's, the target audience is too broad. So,
I mean, I'm thinking more of a customer service type thing.
yeah.
Where there's just some instances where we are the only option to for a citizen to have that encounter, to
Yeah.
provide that service, to interact with the city. And I would want to know how we're doing in those interactions.
You mentioned passports. I think that if we gave a survey code to everyone who actually applied, we'd get a relevant sample from people who actually use the service. But again, if we send it out to, like on Facebook, you'd get 90% of the people who saw it don't even have never
Yeah,
applied.
I think it would have to be a more targeted.
Bumper stickers on the city cars.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the use of the data is important too on our side, so. And I think it's more cut and dry in a customer service type situation. So it's a little bit easier, but I think when we use the data, we have to understand that it's a data point. I don't know that it's automatically a determination of how things are going. Because, you know, depending on the situation, I think most people, they will fill out a survey if they're either upset about something, or if something was like super amazing.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
The people that were like, yeah, it's fine. You know, they
generally don't answer.
typically don't even answer. And so you have to understand that with surveys is the dynamic of what is the data you're actually getting, and then factor that in. I think if if there's enough negative reviews, then there's obviously gonna be some patterns in there that we'll detect and we'll be able to improve. And that sort of thing. So yeah, I think in those situations, it is something we can incorporate.
I'm always, you've heard me say this before, but I'm always really cautious of surveys because you can ask a question that's so leading that there's only one answer that you're gonna get. I mean, if I were to ask the people at the free concert, how'd you like the price of the concert? I think I'm gonna get mostly approved.
Well, yeah, I mean, you'd have to have some strategy in crafting the questions, so they're
Yeah.
not leading and they're actually collecting data, you know, information that we could use
Yeah,
to improve, but.
yeah. Cause that's the whole point.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's just gotta be used carefully. Yeah.
So I guess the discussion last time, there were some KPIs in here where it was based on like a community-wide survey,
Which I don't think.
which can be tricky, yeah,
Yeah,
you know,
gotta be really careful. Any others anybody has a concern with that we're targeting? Frankly, I think we have more than enough
Yeah,
choices of how we get data. And I think that's kudos to Brody and his team for working that out. But we probably don't need to go through every step every time, you know, that's okay. Jordan, did you have something you wanted to weigh in? Don't want to forget you.
No, I mean, you're covering all the points that I was gonna make, so carry on.
All right, then I'm going to move us past KPIs and we'll continue with that until we get it finalized. Item G, introduction of proposed amendments for the Syracuse City Personal Policy and Procedures Manual, first read. Now, let me be very careful and say, every year we have to go through some of the changes. Some of them are triggered by legislation, some are triggered by experience, some are triggered by contractors we work with, but there's always enough of them, and the policy procedure manual is so big that we like to put it on the schedule, give you a chance to read through it and bring anything forward that concerns you. It's not the only chance we'll ever talk about these things, but if we're gonna make the adjustments we have to make, this is part of our process. Anybody have something they wanted to bring forward? It won't be the only time we talk about it. Okay, seeing none, I will move us on to item H, which is our biennial review of Community and Economic Development Department. Noah, you are on the hot seat. Tell us all about your awesome team. And
I would be happy to. She's just gonna pull that up. You guys
Yeah.
didn't read every page of the personnel policy and procedures manual?
That's your job.
Every year.
So,
The answer is yes, they just didn't have a comment.
it was that good.
Yeah, it's so precise.
It was already on point. Okay, so,
I love that thing.
You guys putting all these together at one time.
Okay,
I'll be as brief as possible with this update. It's been a couple of years since we've done one of these. I want to give you guys an update on our team. Our team consists of 11 people. I really believe that we have an awesome team. And one thing that I'll brag is that we haven't had any turnover recently. So that's a good thing. I feel like we're properly staffed. I'm not asking for any new employees or any changes. I feel like over the last several years, we've been kind of adjusting things and tweaking things. We've converted the code enforcement to full-time, which was needed. Business licensing is also full-time, which is also needed. We have the right number of building inspectors to keep up with the state required mandates and plan reviews and everything. So I feel like we're, that's good. That's a good news. Is where we need to be. With these, we always want to touch base with, make sure that we're doing what the city wants us to do, and we work hard to make sure we're complying with the vision statements. A lot of that has to do with growth, and making sure we have some economic development. So we've been really busy in that area. As you know, we've created the PID that will support the Costco infrastructure, created a CRA that will also help with the Costco in the interchange area. We're working off of 2500 West, off 193, created that CRA. We worked as a team with Public Works to get a big grant from the county, which $2.8 million is a big deal. There's been a lot of RDA board items recently. Won't go through all of those. We're always working to land new businesses and follow leads and create new commercial spaces. And of course, we've got the PEP, the PEP, Prioritized Economic Plan. That's on the website, and we can try to reference that, make sure we're doing it. This next vision statement relating to being financially stable, balancing the cost of services with the level of services that we provide. So one thing that is, I'm sure you guys understand this, but I think maybe not all the residents understand that we do collect a ton of impact fees at the building permit stage. I took a picture of this building A in the Wasatch project. You can see what the permit fee is on there. Scroll down a little bit, $300,000 on that one building. The park impact fees, $66,000. So we're actively collecting and assessing a lot of fees with those building permits to make sure that we can provide the services that we need as a city. We also have planning application and business licensing. We're also collecting connection fees for secondary coronaries, the sewer for the city connections, and then working with North Davis Sewer District to collect pass-through fee on that. And then as far as sales tax goes, we've been growing every year, even after we lost R.C. Willey's. We've remained solid on sales tax growth. Vision statement number 4, city will incorporate improvements to vet services that create an overall feeling of connection and pride in the city and its residents. We've been working hard on this West Davis corridor interchange landscape betterments plan. So it's out right now. We're going to do some bid openings this next week. You see, remember the entryway monument sign. This has been multiple years in the making. We're finally playing now. We're going to hire contractors. Our department, pitches in with whatever skills that we have to help other departments, like the roundabout or turf conversion out front, street banners, I know that our building officials really helped a lot with the fire station, park maintenance facility, you know, a lot of this expertise there. And then we have our department specific vision statements. Will be knowledgeable and positive. So of course we all have continuing education and certifications that we keep up on. Vision statement number 3 communicates well with the business community. So all of our applications are online. We attend various alliances and are there for new businesses. I don't know what's going on with that picture, but there's a lot of ribbon cuttings and just anything we can do to support the business community, which of course also involves trying to attract new businesses. I'll put some statistics together. I know that we've been kind of referencing some of these statistics today when we're talking about growth and whether or not we can accommodate and do growth. If you look at total building permits and building permits, you know, there's lots of different types of building permits. Sometimes there should be more building permits, people doing work without a permit, but if we're in the thousands, you know, that in the last 4 years there where we've been flirting around 1,000, that's higher than the city's ever been. If you look just 10 years ago, way down to 400. So we're on a growth trajectory with the number of projects. And go to the next slide, you can see the different kinds of things that we're dealing with. You know, our number one type of permit that's been our bread and butter is a single family home. But you can see this is an anomaly. The townhomes are 14%. This is for where we've been for the last year. So solar is a big one and growing. Roofs, sometimes there's people do roofs without a permit, but they're supposed to get a permit. Furnaces, pools, basements, electric vehicle chargers, that's another growing segment. ADUs, that's another growing segment with people building these in the zones that we do allow them. You know, so there's just a lot of different ways that people are getting permits, and I share this just because that when people are building things, a lot of times it increases property taxes in the city. But if you notice, there's a trend here. So back in 2021, we had 449 single family permits, but then the interest rates changed and it just dropped. Single family permits took a huge dive, and last year we were at 201, so we're still low on the number of permits. But if you look at the next slide, the overall amount of work and things that we have going on is still going up. I mean, the 417 in 2021 is crazy. But you know, if you look back in history, we had a spike of 80 back in 2014. So you know, 417 it's crazy. Even the last year we had 235. We have more that's entitled. And if you look at the combined, the next one, you can see we're still actually lower than we were back in 2021. 2021 was just a crazy year, 866.
That was the apartment year.
That was just
That was
huge
the
growth
apartment
It
year.
was.
Yeah. And if you look at the overall trend here, you know, we're still going up. This last year was 436 with the two combined, which is still growth. Business licenses, you know, of course, we want businesses to come in, provide services, but also generate sales tax. And if you look at those numbers, they just keep growing. We have a lot of businesses, a lot of home businesses. If you look at the next pie chart here, you know, most of our businesses are home businesses. We try to foster those to turn into commercial, and there are a lot of the businesses that are in commercial spaces that started out at home. And of course, there's all the other types of businesses that maybe you don't think about often, but more than just the standard business you might be thinking of. And then if you break out the different types, you can see the commercial business licenses are still growing. And then the home business licenses are the last 2 years, they leveled off, but still, I think on a growth trajectory. So I think the takeaway points for the department is that we're growing, we're good. You should, you know, I'm not asking for anything. You sometimes these become a kind of a sales pitch of the next year's budget, depending on when we're doing it. But I'm not asking for anything extra. I feel like we have a great staff. We're working on expanding our business space. And but yeah, that's us. I feel like, you know, if there's anything, any input you want to give me, now's the time, but.
Like it's one of those times you get up and turn around and be like.
Just drop the mic.
Questions or comments for Noah?
I see that.
Good work. Thank you.
Jordan?
Nope, good presentation.
Okay. Okay, so just the last couple of housekeeping items. We are planning the retreat on April 11th to discuss next year's budget. It will not be as long as usual because there are not as many options we can even consider at this time. And I want to just comment on that. A lot of things that we have done over the past couple of years, setting up 5 and 10-year plans, has made it where it's less debatable. I mean, like, for example, we know that we've just gone and opened the bids for a regional park, and that's pretty much all of our park development. So that's not an hour that we usually use every year. Or similar, we talk about things like capital improvements and replacements. We've been on a plan for several years and not a lot of discussion because we just kind of are stuck in that plan. So because of that, that's good. And I just, this is not that there's anything that we're not talking about. It's just a continuation of things that we've set in motion. And so reflecting on that, don't expect it to be the entire day. But that is the day. I know. Just wanted a lot of people to be prepared. So any other questions or urgent comments? If not, I'll take a will adjourn. Let's get any motion in this meeting.